Hi everybody, welcome. First session. Normally I get the last session of the day and everyone wants to go to the after party. So glad to have the first session and speak with you. Everybody's fresh, that's great. Welcome. For those of you who are not from Princeton University or haven't been here before, welcome to campus. If by the way, if you get a chance, if you have a few minutes, go check out our new museum because it's new and it's really pretty cool. And if you have some time on campus, it's really a great stop before you leave. So my name is Christian Noble. I lead digital strategy here at the university in the Office of Communications. I'm going to show you a statistical and large language model analysis that I use to produce a content audit that tells me a few things that are important to me. How well a page is performing, where it should fall on our update priority list, whether its messaging is consistent with my goals and my office's goals, and if not, what I need to do to fix it. Now, I created it to audit my Drupal pages because, and I'll tell you a little more about this in a minute, I don't have the staff to do it manually. And my aim is to press a button and get a 25-page or so content audit. And it's the kind of audit that I would expect to get from a junior analyst who might write it in the course of, I don't know, like a day or a day and a half. So what I'm doing is I'm setting the bar low. Right? I wonder if it's too low, because why not shoot for the moon and go for like a McKinsey-style report? Why not go for the top? Well, let's talk about it. And I'm going to explain with this Studio Ghibli-style picture of me. It's a ChatGPT rendering of a photo that I gave it. I'm sure we've all done this. And actually, I think it's pretty good. I mean, I've shaved since then. That's what I look like in the summer, somewhat. I mean, you can recognize me, right? You know. But here's the original. Right there, right? And you can see that the illustration is close, but it's still an interpretation. I think it made me look a little troubled too, frankly. I was just kind of goofing around that day. Still, I'd give this a solid B+, right? And that's where we're headed. We're headed to a B+. So, okay, what's so special about a B+? Do we want a B+ content audit? Don't we want an A? Well, I think that's what you'd expect from a junior analyst who's doing all the analytical grunt work over the course of a day and a half. And I, as like the manager here, I'm great with a B+, because if someone hands that to me, I can just then spend about an hour or so to kind of clean it up and get it ready for my stakeholders. And I love that more because that lets me focus on the higher value work that I prefer to do. So I'm going to show you how I got there, and I hope to give those of you who are business owners and also for you developers, a kind of sense of what's possible and give you both the language and the framework so that you can work together and discuss the problem and figure out a way forward together. But first, I want to tell you the story behind this project and why I need a machine to be my junior analyst. So I work for Central Comms at Princeton, and about 75% of the effort that we do goes towards strategic messaging in the form of what we call news. It's news about the university. And that's great, except that our visitors spend most of their time on about 100 pages that describe what Princeton's about. Things like academics, research, admission, visiting, the kind of stuff if you're looking to say, hey, what is this school about? Those are the pages you go to. Now, news is really important to us, and it's so important that's where we're spending our time. So we don't have a lot of time to spend on these other 100 or so pages, even though they're highly trafficked. And that's made even harder by a new problem. That guy, not Sauron, but the Eye of Sauron. If you're in higher education, you know the Eye of Sauron is definitely watching you. So budgets and personnel, they've been pulled back across higher ed. It's certainly true here at Princeton. I lost my analytics specialist, unlikely to get another one, and my office is now spending its time and resources trying to get the littlest eye to look somewhere else, like at Harvard. It is a true story, isn't it? And so when we do have time to work on these non-news pages, we usually, what do? I'm sure, very common scenario. You get a bunch of people in the room, you throw up a screenshot, and someone says, okay, let's just make this better. And what happens? everybody groans, right? It's not a pleasant experience, and nobody wants to do that kind of work. And then if you do it 100 times, it turns out nobody shows up to the meetings at all. And that's not really productive, is it? That's not going to get you where you need to be. So why does everybody groan? Well, first, what does better even mean, right? If we want positive change, we have to be very specific about what works and what doesn't work. If you have good content strategists and you have good analytics strategists, that's what they do. They work towards that positive change, and they're very specific about it. And second, we have to remove screenshots. I'm going to have one here. We're going to look at this page. I'll do a demo later, and this will be the page we use for the demo. We got to take those screenshots out of the equation because they are shiny objects that everybody seems to focus on. And what they don't tell you is, does the content fit the page's purpose? Does it support the key message? Does it meet the audience and the institutional goals? And the one thing screenshots will never, ever, ever be able to tell you is how a page is performing, right? You need analytics for that. And then finally, it's hard for us to think across domains. Hey, you writers, what are you thinking? You think in words, right? Designers, you guys think in terms of images and page layout. Stakeholders think in terms of org charts. And executives, they're just a pain in the ass. don't keep them in the room, get them. You guys go have coffee. So a good content audit is going to take those shiny objects out of the process so that the entire team, no matter what their job is, can think together, think in unison towards the goal of improving the page. A content audit takes that blob, normalizes it so we can do all that. But it takes a lot of time to make one of those, about a day and a half, as I mentioned. So I don't have the time and resources, but I still have the need. And so I wondered, here we are in this, I think it's fair to say, this world of emerging AI. Is that fair? I know we were just having a conversation, John and I and Brian, about that earlier, about what that meant. So in this world of emerging AI, can I press a button and generate at least a B+ first draft? I think I can. That's what I want to show you. So it does start with already knowing what a good content audit should look like, right? So work with your content team on that. They'll help you out. And once you have that in hand, then the next step is figuring out what to feed it. And I figured what I need to do is feed it two things: metrics and content. And I need both because, well, what happens, right? The metrics, they're going to tell me how people are engaging with my content. The two together give me a fuller picture, help me make smarter decisions. Okay, so once I understood what I needed, now I have to put it into like a structured form, right? Because if I'm going to use a large language model, it really does want structured data. It works best when it has structured data that you give it. And so that's what I got to do. And so I stared down my 100 Drupal pages, and I saw that I had a problem. And that problem was, I have scripts. I'm using Python. We'll see that a little bit later. They've got to interpret this content. So I've got to give them the structured representation, and I tried really hard to do that with some usual tools, basically scraping, and none of this worked. So I used Beautiful Soup. That failed. I asked AI, figure, I can do anything and everything, right? Well, no, it can't. Both Beautiful Soup and AI brought me back really, really noisy data. So I needed to do something else. So, of course, I turned to Drupal because Princeton.edu is in Drupal. So I wanted to turn my nodes then into JSON, and I figured, well, what do we all do? We turn to the JSON API and RESTful Web Services modules. And I failed again, right? I really did, failed hard. And the reason I did was because the way we've architected the site specifically, I don't have the screenshot up, but the page. So we have a node, and then we're using paragraphs to reference custom entities, and those custom entities are then referencing maybe some media entities or other entities. And so I had to do this dive after dive after dive after dive and kind of bring all that stuff back. Yeah, John, you're nodding your head.
I had to build that thing.
I know, you did. It's his fault.
It is.
But I couldn't do it with, at least I couldn't, maybe there was a way, but I couldn't do it with the regular Drupal modules that we like to use for this stuff. So I had to build a custom module that teases out all this data from the entities within the entities within the entities. Now on the right, I have just an excerpt of what that data looks like from the node. I will show you this in a little bit more detail later on, but this is just one of those paragraphs. You can just see starts 1, here's number 2, and it's a bunch of stuff, but that's great because I am grabbing all the data that I need. Then I needed the metrics. So engagement metrics were the top of my list. And I pulled together engagement metrics out of GA4 and was based on a specific question. Is this page leaving a good first impression? Now, that means I thought I want to get the first page view event. It's really the stuff that comes out of the landing page report that you can put together in GA4. And for me, that's the most critical moment in a user's journey because if I ask that question, if I get that data, I'm setting that bar really, 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 really high because someone is going to come to my site, they're going to land on one of these pages, however they get there, and they're going to decide, am I going to interact with this site or am I going to leave? So if I can pass that test, then I think I've got a pretty good basis to move forward. So I identified metrics in 3 other categories, where the traffic comes from, how people click to and from my pages within the site, that page flow data, right? And then where do they go when they leave? Because we do, actually, one of the purposes of Princeton.edu is to get people to other sites on campus. Okay, those are my metrics. Once I had them, I then needed a way to make those numbers usable, right? Both for my stakeholders and then for the LLM calls that I'm going to do later. And to do that, I figured I had to bucket pages into high and low performers. So I want to know, for example, is this page's bounce rate unusually high? Because if it is, then I know I have to take action on it. And I can only answer that by comparing the page that I'm studying to other landing pages within the site. Because one thing we don't have is like some national database of admission page performance across all the higher ed websites. So that's for me is something I can't get. So I figured my next best thing to look at was what are all the landing pages doing within my site. So I'm bucketing in these high-low using 2 different techniques because I have 2 situations I need to keep my mind on. So the first technique I'm using is called interquartile range. Sometimes you hear it called IQR. If you've ever seen a box plot like I have here on the right, that's IQR at work. IQR finds what's normal by identifying the middle, that big fat middle data of the data where most pages fall. That sounds great, right? What's normal? I don't care about normal. Normal doesn't help me at all. I'm interested in the outliers, right? I want to know the pages that are at the very top of the range and the very bottom of the range, because chances are they're going to tell me something about how my site's working, specifically if it's working right or if it's working wrong, depending on the metric. So for each metric, IQR is going to tell me those top 25%, those are my, let's say, high performers, and then the bottom 25%, those are my low performers. So what are the best and worst pages within the context of all of them? Now IQR it's good. It's good with a large data set. I've got those 100 pages, but it's not sensitive to small changes in the data, say changes in page views from one reporting period to another. It doesn't really zoom in very well. So if I'm looking at a section where instead of 100 pages, I might have 5 pages, IQR is really not going to help me, so I needed a different technique.
Sorry, can you go back a second?
Yeah, sure.
What do you mean by weirdo pages?
I meant outliers. That was just the Christian noble way of saying outliers, really.
How is weirdo different from high or low?
I'm using them synonymously.
All right.
Yeah. I think I'll take that out then for the next time I do this talk. Thank you for the feedback. All right, so if I got to zoom in, no more weirdo pages, promise. If I have to zoom in, I'm going to use Jenks natural breaks to do that. Because sections tend to have lumpy data, right? You only have a few pages, and some of those pages have, a lot of traffic. Most of the other ones have, not so great traffic. And Jenks also finds those high and low performers, but it does it in a different way. What it does is it finds where the data naturally wants to cluster together, those places where the numbers are very, very similar. So to see what it does, let's take a look at the bar chart we have here. I have here on the right. By the way, this is data from another project, but I think it illustrates what I'm aiming for here. Okay, so we got a bunch of ideas really, and then they're scored. And let's, for a moment, in our mind's eye, take away those red lines that are denoting the groups that Jenks finds. If I were to ask you to tell me how do these group in like 2 clusters, that wouldn't really be too hard. I don't know, maybe you'd make I can't really point up that high. Project case studies 5-4, you might say everything below is low and everything above is high, reasonable. And if I asked you for 3, you could probably pull it out and might even be able to do that fairly consistently over time. But like I have here, what about 5 clusters? It's really, really hard. It's really hard to do that consistently. It's hard to do that accurately. And Jenks is able to do it. It's using some math to do that and do it consistently every time. So now I've got my quantitative work done. I've got IQR and Jenks. They're finding my high and low performing pages either on the macro level or on the section level. I've also got my content now in JSON format. Now it's time for me to turn to the LLM and start interpreting the metrics and the content. So let's talk about that. All right, the challenges that I've found at least, because interpreting the content and the quantitative data, sometimes separately, sometimes together, this for me is where it gets hard, right? Getting these things down, even if I'm aiming for a B+. Now, AI is good at finding patterns in the data, really good, but I think you got to work at it to get consistent and reliable results. Because AI won't do everything for you, right? There's no magic wand here, Brian, right? No magic wand, for sure. And getting those prompts right, they may drive you crazy. They certainly have driven me crazy. And I think the hardest part is guiding the LLM to produce language that my stakeholders understand. They're mostly content creators and former journalists, and they don't want the kind of stuff that, frankly, I think LLMs want to produce for us, kind of like the management consulting speak, balanced assessments, nuances, whatnot. No, they want to know, here's what's wrong, and here's what I got to do about it. And yet there's sort of a sort of built-in tension here between me and the stakeholders, because if I'm the digital strategist, I don't need just that sort of direct analysis. I need to know the balanced assessment because, pages are complicated, right? You tune a page over here and you could be contradicting something you did over there. And I don't want that to happen because I'm looking holistically at the entire page and its performance, not simply as a set of things to do. The second challenge that I get with the LLM bringing data back to me is consistency, because at least now drift is a real problem. I think we've probably all experienced that, and it's hard to be consistent for one very long document, and then it's also hard to be consistent over the course of 100 documents, and then what about next year and the year after? Because I need to maintain the same basic set of ideas so that my team has the same baseline and shared understanding from year to year, from document to document, and within the document itself. And then finally, in terms of challenges, there are the things that maybe they possibly annoy you right now when you use an AI chatbot. They're certainly not absent when you make an API call. And the biggest one I struggle with is assumptions. AI loves making assumptions. If it sees a little bit of a crack, lack of knowledge, it's going to do everything to try and fill it. And so it's trying to fill that gap, and then sometimes it brings back stuff that isn't relevant or doesn't even really exist, the stuff we tend to call hallucinations. So I developed a strategy. And this is basically it here. The first part is when not to use an LLM, right? Because it didn't work for everything I wanted. And that is if I had a deterministic outcome, like something I needed to produce that was going to be the same every single time. I want to put that in code. That's a logical kind of thing. So if you've got like filtering and sorting and grouping, those kinds of things, you're better off, and math, you're better off putting all that sort of stuff in logic or in code. But when it comes to, bless you, qualitative analyses, the LLM gets all of them. So, what's my page's key message? LLM gets it. What does this particular content component articulate? And does it match the page's key message? That's going to an LLM. Now, what do the analytics tell me about how user behavior relates to the page's content? All that stuff is going to the LLM. And that's what it's well suited for. And then finally, again, I got to keep reminding myself, I'm aiming for a B+ here. And as of today, this might be different by the end of the day, for sure. AI can't get me a perfect analysis, even though it is constantly evolving and getting better at a rapid pace. But you know what? That's all right. I'm happy with just a good one. It saves me a lot of time. Let me tell you about my prompting approach. I'm not going to go into the basics of prompt writing. There's plenty of stuff out there. We all have experience doing that, I'm sure. But I've got a few tips, things that I learned, maybe they can help you. So first, prompts produce better results when you give them that structured data that I mentioned, and only the data they need. Don't give them a lot of extra stuff thinking, oh, they might need it, maybe something will come back better. No, you're just going to confuse the thing and get garbage back. Well, not great stuff back, I should say. Include that deterministic data where it needs to. Include the context that helps it see the bigger picture, but only what it needs. So, for example, I can't assess a component's fit against a page's key message unless I'm going to give it the prompt output from an LLM call that I might have done earlier that finds the page's key message. I'm going to need that context in order for it to give me the right answer. So the second thing that I use in my approach is that fewer targeted prompts with limited outputs I've found were more effective than one giganto prompt that asks everything and says, bring me back 5, 6, 7 things. Keeping it focused, keeping it targeted brought me back better results than that mega prompt. Third, I needed to bind, tie up, duct tape, whatever metaphor you want to use, image you want to use. I wanted to bind that LLM tightly with what it was allowed to do and what it was not allowed to do. Sometimes we call these guardrails. Because it wants to make assumptions, and so I had to play like whack-a-mole a lot to stop it from doing that by adding no, to like a child almost, right? AI is like a child. Don't do that. That helped me out a lot. And then finally, I had to revise. If I did not get back something I liked, I went try to figure out why and revise the prompt. Oh, and by the way, the biggest help for me in fixing AI prompts is AI itself. I found that was a real huge help too. So leverage the tool for the tool, I guess. Sort of meta. Okay, let's look at the anatomy of a prompt to see that strategy at work. I'm just going to look at one. I have 21 prompts in total. They're doing a lot of things. Some are iterating. We'll see this in a demo through content. I've got 3 content prompts, and I'm just going to walk you through one. It starts, this is for getting the key message of my page. It starts by stating the prompt's goal, and I'm giving it 2 inputs. You can see it here. I'm passing the values from the JSON that I have to it. And I'm saying, what's the content's primary message here based on the data that I'm giving you? And then I give it the instructions for that. And I'm asking it, hey, analyze the meaning, find the most important idea. Now, I'm going to keep this slide up here, but I'm going to highlight 2 parts. And that is, even in the instructions, I'm putting up the guardrails and telling it what not to do. I'm saying, hey, don't be concerned with the page's goals. That's not your concern. And don't forget to read the alt text. That's part of the content. As I found, it was reading the body and then it was ignoring the alt text, even though I was feeding it to it. So please, LLM, do what I tell you. Then I get to the output. And really, there are 2 parts to it. One is give me the output if you've got the data, and the other is a fallback. If you don't, return to me no discernible content. So at least I know in my report that something went wrong, and I can go back and try and fix it. And then finally, the guardrails. And there are a lot of them there. I'm sorry that the text is so small. But it's basically, look, don't choke on things that are missing. Don't assume anything. Keep it short, direct. Don't analyze or don't overanalyze. Don't reference anything, and give me back only JSON because that's what I want. So a lot of prohibitions. And then if I bucket all those different parts of the prompt, I mean, you can see that the guardrails, the do's and don'ts, 57% of what I wrote in my prompt. I mean, that, you know, hey, it's like a child. Don't do that. You know, you gotta learn to do it right. And I had to really develop that part of the prompt. Okay, so we've got the data inputs. We've transformed them with math. We've then built our LLM prompts. Now let's see how this whole thing works together. And here's my pipeline. And it's for those of you who are not developers, pipeline's a sequence of steps that takes the inputs and turns them into a final report. And the scripts are doing all the work here, and I have the scripts in Python. So we're going to start with the analytics performance analysis. This is where I'm pulling in the Drupal node in JSON and some of the GA4 engagement metrics. Well, actually all the GA4 engagement metrics, but not the page flow stuff. So I'm going to figure out in that which page and section I'm analyzing. I'm going to create some derivative metrics that are going to be useful to me later. And then I'm going to run those IQR and Jenks algorithms on those metrics. Now all of that information then gets passed to the LLM content analysis, and there I'm pulling in my remaining GA4 metrics. Those are the ones that don't need pre-processing. They don't need Jenks and IQR. They're just going to be treated as is. And then I'm going to run a bunch of LLM calls to interpret those metrics and the page's content. Again, as I said earlier, diving into each of the content sections within my page. And you'll see this in the demo. I'm actually going to run LLM calls several times on each one of those content sections. I'll also identify risks, look at my priorities. I'll create an action plan. And then I'll write some summaries for my stakeholders. Oh, and by the way, I'm using GPT-4o Mini here because that's what Princeton provides to us here on campus officially for free. Not that people aren't using others, but oh wait, I shouldn't say that in the microphone, should I? Okay, too late. Oh well, all you guys using Claude. That data then gets packaged, and I've got a docx template, and then I can share that on Google Drive and whatnot as a docx. Things for my whole team to use. Okay, since we know that live demos always work out in conferences, I thought I'd do one. So I'm going to run this locally. Let's see how this stuff looks. Let me get it to you here. Bear with me one sec as I bring my different parts into view on the two screens. And let's go and take a look at what we're trying to do. And I might even, if it works out, get some music in there. Okay. So the page we're going to look at is continuing education, part of the academics section. Let me just give you a quick tour of it. We have a hero up top, gives us the section name. We then have the components I talked about that are the entities with the paragraphs to entities to entities to entities. Here we have a quote at the top, and you can see most of these, not the next one, but there's text and an image. Here's one without an image, call to action, and then here are the remainder, image and text with links, and all good stuff. And then finally we get to the bottom, and here's our last one that's got some links within the text and no specific call to action. Now if we're going to look at this in terms of the JSON representation, it looks like this. We've got basic page data up here on the top, then some breadcrumb info. This stuff I put, you'll see it in a second when I show you the document. Metadata from the meta tag module, quite a bit of it there. Not too exciting. And now we get to those content components. Here's our hero component. There's things in here like the UUID and things that I won't use in the report because it's not good for my stakeholders, but it helps me when I have to diagnose a problem. And then those other content tiles. Here is the quote. Here's the text for it. We've got that an image there. Here's the URL of the image and the alt text. And it's just the same sort of stuff over and over like I showed you on the page as we go from tile to tile to tile or component. We call them tiles. Those content components just pulling up the same stuff, including some links. Here's the call to action for one of them, for example, and there you go. Okay, so that's the JSON. Now, let's see if it works. Here's I'm going to do it on the command line locally. I'm pointing to the node JSON representation, and then all of my Google Analytics data. And let's see if this will work. Let's get some. There's nothing like. Hopefully this will work. You got to run some command line stuff with music, right? Will that work? Kind of. All right, let's go. Okay. So here it just did the first cut of all the statistics. Now it's running those LLM calls. First the analytics ones. So it's going to ChatGPT and saying, please make some sense out of these metrics. And now we get to the content ones, and there's going to be a lot of them. Now you can see right above. Do I have it there? Yeah, 44 calls are expected. Now it's kind of moving up the screen there. And then I've got on the left something to keep me interested in watching the screen as I babysit, which is just a little progress bar. And we're going through each tile here, or each content component, and I'm running 3 LLM calls on each one to pull up things like the key message, any support flags, and some content interpretation, which you'll see in the final report. Best way to watch, a command line thing go, I think. And we're almost done. Now some page level, some general analysis is happening here. Getting my risks, checking out my metadata. Is it right? Is it wrong? Page flow work. And then finally putting together a bunch of to-dos and an action plan for us to work on. And the executive summary for my executives. Okay, and now we're going to generate the report. And there's more song, but anyway, there you go. It's a party in my office every day. I just want you to know that. All right, let's take a look and see what the report looks like. And bear with me one sec. Here's the little repo. Here it is, continuing education. Just now, 10:32 a.m., nothing up my sleeve. And here it is. So, I'm not going to go through this in excruciating detail because it's 24 pages. But the first couple of pages are the summary, from my leadership. It's a high priority page, and that's a deterministic output there. But then here's LLM in action. Continuing education page is underperforming. That's really true. It reflects a mix of user interest and limited exploration. Although visitors engage with the content, they tend to navigate away quickly after assessing only a few pages, indicating that the page is capturing attention but not guiding users to deeper resources. Now, that's a really important finding, right? I mean, that's a big red flag there that I need to know and that my team needs to know. And there's just some more here. What's happening with the page. Now, I'm going to tell you that right now, I just was working on this with my boss this week. This is not exactly in the right shape for us. I have to get this more into that, like I mentioned before. Here's what's wrong and here's what to do. This is a little more the consultant speak, which is not good for my team. So I'm going to be revising this because it needs just to be a lot punchier. And then we've got some risks, which actually I'm just mostly copying that from another section. The same with the to-do list. So I'll clean that up. All right, let's get into the meat of the report here. There's a bunch of stuff that's not in it. I got to enter it manually because there are things that the LLM isn't really going to know. When we last reviewed it, great example. Some of the governance stuff. Who are my campus partners, right? I guess I could set that up somewhere so you could pull it in, but I'll do that by hand. I know who those people are. Accessibility. I think I can hook into Drupal and editorially, right, John? Yeah. So I want to put that in this report too instead of entering it manually. But I have to do it for now, and any assignments and deadlines and so forth. So we'll see the enter manually finger show up a little bit. So here's that basic page info. review cadence. Okay, here's the LLM in action again. What's the purpose of the page? It's to inform and engage community members about available continuing education opportunities offered by Princeton, including auditing classes and participating in various education programs. Yeah, 100% right. It nailed it there. But I think there's an area where it's going to fall down. It usually does. And that's here at expected audience. Local Princeton town residents? Sure. Continuing education, absolutely. They can audit courses. Current faculty? No, that's a fail. Is current faculty going to audit a course? I mean, maybe they might, but they're not. They're just going to walk into their colleague's office and say, can I sit in? Alumni? Yep. Community college educators seeking professional development? Yeah, sure. So I'd edit this by hand. That B+, that's the B+ in action, right? So I got to make it an A. I got to take out things that are that I know are not relevant. I'm the domain expert, right? So I know, and the LM doesn't know certain things, or it's guessing wrong. And then maybe I can go back later and try to fix up the prompt. We've got some risks. Governance, I got to enter manually. And then performance. Deterministic, sure, good flag. How's it performing as a landing page? High. I better pay attention to this. It's a high performing landing page, so it's in that upper quartile of the IQR, you know, the outliers there. That's what I wanted to know, but it's underperforming. So I got a page that's really important that is not performing well. That right there is the formula for I better pay attention to this thing. It really, really matters. And then we get into metrics. The middle column, that's going to be from my IQR calc. The right column is going to be from an LLM looking at, you know, if a views per engaged session is low, what does that mean? If a bounce rate is low, what does that mean? And giving someone who's reading this some interpretation. All right. Moving on, channel traffic drivers. I'm being very conservative here. And so a lot of times I've got nothing because I really set the threshold high to determine if some external channel is really driving traffic. But if it does, it's going to show up there. My page flow information, probably too much detail for a stakeholder for sure, and then I'll analyze that page flow. Users are frequently arrive at the page from the main site, well, the home page really, indicating significant entry interest. Yeah, okay, good. But let's see the next one. Also serves as a destination for several outbound clicks. Great. There is a notable presence on the page of both source and destination lists. Okay, a little mushy. I'm not really happy with this, so I'm going to go back and fix my call. I'll analyze the analytics, and then we'll look at the content tiles. I'm going to skip the header because it's not very interesting. But here's that first. Here, let's look at it. All right, going back up. So here's the quote by this person, Lawrence Sosa. And let's go back here. Lawrence Sosa quote for continuing education. What's the key message? Educators can greatly benefit from the opportunity to audit Princeton courses, gaining fresh insights and perspective for their teaching. Yeah, absolutely. It really did hit it. And then as I look, again, LLM calls, is it relevant to the page? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And it's all right. And then finally we get a summary. So my content team can look at the component on its own and say, yeah, this is doing the job it's supposed to be doing on the page because it's consistent with what we're aiming for, or no, it's not, and actually I have a middle ground. Maybe we'll see it in here. I'll just scroll all the way down because I'm going to get to the other stuff. Just repeating the same pattern over and over again, and until we get to, where are you? Metadata and SEO. Just pulling this. This is really just getting pulled right from the node. I'll do an analysis. They accurately reflect the page, but they use default values. Yeah, that's true. Not specifically targeted to continuing education. 100% true. We really don't do a good job here with SEO. So it's telling me, hey, fix it. I'll add accessibility, and then we get to the action plan. What are we going? What are the to-dos for us based on these results? Revise your metadata. Right? Include clear calls to action and step-by-step guidance on how to enroll in continuing education courses. We don't do that. That's probably very useful for our users. People are coming to the page, and then we're not giving them a call to action to go do what it is we told them to do. Enhance content layout. Yeah, okay, whatever. I'd blow that one off. Conduct a review of traffic acquisition channels because it didn't hit my threshold. And that means I'm not doing a good enough job promoting this page externally on other channels. So good to-do list. There might be others I might add, and then I might have a change log there. So that is the report. Let's go back here.
Sorry, before you can you go back somewhere you have some accessibility
Yeah.
information?
So right now I'm doing that manually.
No,
Oh,
above that.
above it?
Yeah.
I don't remember where. Tell me where to stop.
Keep going out.
Oh, I know this, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Very, very, very simple check. Just making sure that the alt text is well formed. Largely, did you put a period at the end of the alt text sentence, for example?
Okay.
It's not as comprehensive as I get from that I put in that section from editorially or dubbot, which they're going to do more significant checks on
Okay.
that. That was just. Yeah, I shouldn't say this in the microphone. My content team struggles a little bit with alt text, so I'm just trying to pound them a little bit on that so that we get into a better place for that.
Okay.
If they see it, that's good. Yeah.
It's interesting to see all of these to-do items that come out of this, the actionable points. I'm always worried about when I see to-do tasks generated by AI because they take real time, and then somebody who's going to do them, they're like, do I really need to do them, or is it something that the tool just spit out? Like, when a project manager sits and for 30 minutes writes out, here's what you need to do, the individual contributors knows, yeah, hey, it makes sense for me to spend 10 hours doing this thing. But if something spits out 50 tasks, do you want to spend hours in each one?
Yeah, I agree with you. Let me get back to the microphone. Question is, LLM, I'm doing for the recording here, the LLM is spitting out a bunch of to-dos. They're not necessarily applicable, or they're going to send people in a bunch of different directions. Is it better for the project manager to specify what they are? Is that fair to say? I agree 100%. That's part of the B+, I think, here, where I'm going to spend time and I'm going to validate that and say, good idea or not. I think the one we just looked at, I think there was something about layout. I'm nuking that. Forget it. What is anybody going to do there? That's our pattern. That's our design system. So I agree with you 100%. You've got to go through this. I mean, this is true for the whole report. Go through it and make sure that everything is valid. Yeah, totally good. Yeah.
So just as a follow-up on that, just more like a statement that the to-dos are really, if you want to think about them, the initial ones that they create are really for the LLM itself. And then so what I do a lot of times when I'm working with these is really tell it, okay, this is a new audience that I need you to distill it down for. It's not, but you want to keep those to-dos as like the top level, sort of like, LLM level things that it could do, and it's going to say, oh yeah, you might want to do these, but then you can distill it down as like a next step. So like a lot of times when I'm doing really complicated things, I'll say, explain this to my 6th grader, explain it to my 12th grader, explain this, and have it redo it, and that helps to sort of like, hone it down to like more actionable things for individual contributors instead of thinking of, it thinks about things in like, oh, I'll hold all this in a context window.
That actually I think brings up something interesting. You're now getting me to think in a little bit different direction here, because maybe what I should be doing instead is generating the report, then going through and editing it, making sure it's right, and if something like maybe I have to address a new audience comes up, then take the report and tell it in a separate process to give me a draft set of to-dos or something like that. Thanks for sending me in a new direction there. That's good. Okay, great. Kind of finishing up here. Okay. I have some lessons I want to share with you. First thing, as I mentioned earlier, AI is not magic, right? No magic wand. Getting to that B+ is what I want, but it's hard work, as I mentioned. Prompts are hard, and deterministic logic actually takes you a really, really long way. I use that first before I go to the LLM. This process replaces no human. I lost an analytics position. I'm not getting it back. I don't think so, at least not anytime soon. So this process helps me fill the gap, fill the need that I have. And you are the boss, and we were just talking about that right now, right? Right? Yeah, well, we're talking about myself here. You're the boss. You're the expert. You know your web property. You know its history. You know the users, the purpose, the whole thing. You also have the relationships with the stakeholders. You know where the landmines are in the politics of your organization. AI is never going to know that. it can't replace that knowledge. It can't replace institutional knowledge. So don't think that it's going to be able to do that. And if it starts to veer into, kooky kind of stuff and it's hallucinations and whatnot, bring it on back. At the end of the day, that report's going to have your name on it. So you got to make sure that it's right. I mean, it is your fallible assistant, and treat it as a fallible assistant. So what does the future look like for this project? And I know we're coming up to the end. I'm going to continue to improve it. We're past the proof of concept stage. We're now starting to work it into our workflow, still editing little parts of it to get it in the right place. I want automatic content audit, so I'll have it run on its own in the cloud, hook into some additional APIs like .bot and editorially, and then expand it, because if I now know how to assess my content, I can start asking different questions. Like, okay, here are all the news nodes or news articles that people wrote this week. What is the general message from all these news nodes that were read this week? Does it match our strategic goals? And if it's a mismatch, what are we doing wrong? If we can start talking in meaningful ways. So that's the whole thing. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you found the story valuable and that you can go out back to where you all come from. And while you may not need this exact system that you can see that you can certainly turn your content and your metrics into something that your team can act on, maybe by just pressing a button, which is great. And I'm happy to talk more about the details. I know we're out of time, but I'm happy to take any questions whenever. And thank you all for patiently listening to me drone on for 45 minutes. I really do appreciate it. Yeah.
Have you looked into any like Drupal MCP to expose that same data in a more automated way so that you don't have to export the JSON from all the sources?
Yeah. Question is, have I looked into an MCP to be able to do this on a more automatic level with the data? Not yet, no. Where I am sort of heading right now is getting into Google Cloud Platform and then using the Google Analytics API to bring it in automatically. Because that's a little bit of a bear with having all those files come down. Yeah. So maybe an MCP, yeah.
When it comes to your analytics data, right? Obviously now there's a lot of AI web scrapers and bots out there. How do you separate that traffic for your analysis, or do you even care?
Yeah, we haven't completely. This is how do I separate the bot traffic from the human traffic? Right, fair. Yeah. So we've done some work in Cloudflare to filter some of those out. We've had some discussions. We haven't done it on the Google Analytics level, so right now we're taking it as is. But this is for this year. That's a thing that we're starting to talk about, and we need to take action on this year, because what's the last stat I saw? Like more than 50% of web traffic is now bots, right? So that's distorting the picture that I'm giving to if that's true, and I believe it, that's distorting that picture. And we are aware of it. We're talking about it. We've taken early steps. We haven't taken all the steps we need. Yeah.
Did you say you wrote a custom module that we would need?
Yes. I wrote in for Drupal, and it's just taking my local Drupal instance on my machine and just spitting out JSON.
Is that available?
Oh, is it available? Oh, no. No, it doesn't make sense too, because it's customized for my site, which has for its specific architecture. So if I gave it to you, it probably wouldn't work.
It'd be a good place for me to start.
That's a good point. Okay, maybe I can make it available. Thank you. Yes. Okay, I'll think about that.
As a scaffold,
Just-
framework.
Yeah.
To give it to my AI and say, make this work with my
See, are we timed, Michael? Yeah.
Time, but you can ask
Okay, another
me
bit?
questions.
Okay. Yeah, we do need models that each of us are working on to help the next guy. So, okay, thank you for the reminder there. I just thought I just did my dumb thing, and who would be interested, But I see your point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Any other questions before we adjourn for the Dubbot-sponsored coffee? Well, thank you all very much. It's been a lot of fun talking to you today.
Thank you.